So we got the news yesterday, which you might have seen in my previous video talking about EA cancelling the Black Panther game and also shutting down Cliffhanger Studios, which in turn leads to laying off a bunch of developers. It's obviously very bad news in and of itself, and it's also bad news for Battlefront 3 if that were to ever be made, because it now obviously seems even less likely. And so today, I wanted to kind of pitch my idea for how Battlefront 3 could still be made outside of EA, albeit this is very unlikely. But I do still think there is a pathway to this game, however unlikely that may be, and that is what I wanted to talk about in today's video. Now, I have to sort of preface this to start that obviously I do not understand how all of this stuff works. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is the type of thing that is very easy for me to say, like, oh, this is how they should do it and this would work, when I don't understand the ins and outs of creating a developer studio and actually working on a game and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm a simple man, probably a very simple man at that. And so as much as I'm saying, oh, this would be great to see, I understand it is very unlikely, both from a technical standpoint and also like financially and stuff. But this is more about a, in a perfect world, this is how I would love to see them bring the band back together. So yeah, keep that in mind. It's very unrealistic, I know, but it's more just food for thought at the end of the day. Now, before I lay out my actual plan for how this works, I want to tell a story of a company called Sandfall Interactive. This is going to sound like it has nothing to do with Battlefront whatsoever, and you might be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Trust me, there's a point to it, so let me land, and then I will link it back to how this relates to Battlefront. So there is a little company that you guys may or may not have heard of called Sandfall Interactive. And this actually started with a bunch of former Ubisoft developers. I think there were people from other studios as well, but I think the overwhelming majority of that team used to work at Ubisoft, and essentially they banded together to kind of make their own studio for a bunch of different reasons. I think potentially some of them were laid off, and also some of them just left on their own accord to set up their own studio. So this started with a bunch of former Ubisoft developers, and it ended up with a new studio called Sandfall Interactive, which is a team of about 30 developers. Now, for context, 30 developers is not much at all. Most big games out there, they usually have anywhere from maybe 200 to 300, even more than that. And the really big studios out there like Rockstar and stuff, apparently they have like upwards of 1,000 developers across the world. So 30 developers obviously isn't much at all, but with only those 30 developers, that team at Sandfall Interactive went on to create a game that you guys may have heard about recently called Expedition 33, which in my opinion will be Game of the Year in 2025. I'll be absolutely astonished if that game does not win Game of the Year. I haven't finished it yet, but I have played a hell of a lot, and it is so damn good. And I can't see anything that's coming out this year beating it now that GTA is delayed till next year. So that team of only 30 developers, I believe they said there was 33 in total. Those 33 developers who left Ubisoft, which keep in mind is a pretty similar type of publisher company like EA. They left, they set up their own shop, and they've now produced what I think will be Game of the Year. So this whole situation that's happened with Expedition 33 kind of gave me the idea that imagine the DICE team that made Battlefront 2. They sort of banded back together, created their own studio, and actually brought us Battlefront that way. Now, again, it might sound very unrealistic, and it probably is. I want to make that clear again. This is probably very, very unrealistic. It's just a perfect world situation I would love to see. But it's been clear that so many of these guys have expressed interest in returning to make a Battlefront 3. This isn't just me being a typical YouTuber clickbaiting and just making a bunch of shit up. This has been said word for word by some of these former DICE developers who have not only just sort of tweeted about the game in this recent bit of hype, but they've literally said, I would return if Battlefront 3 was ever made. So as much as it might be a little bit unrealistic, the desire is clearly there from multiple of these developers. Now, to go through some of them, the former design director on Battlefront, Dennis Brandvold, he tweeted about the game saying he felt a great disturbance in the Force, obviously a bit of a nod to Star Wars, but also just acknowledging the noise that we're making in the community at the moment. Ben Walk, who is the former community manager, he's now a producer still at DICE working on the next Battlefield game. He also tweeted a few things now. In fact, just 12 hours ago, as I'm recording this, he just tweeted about triple XP in Battlefront. He said that it's live and that people should jump on and play. So that is kind of the two main guys. Dennis and Ben were kind of the figureheads for the Battlefront dev team, I guess you would say. But there has been more than that as well. We saw that Harvey Newman, who used to be, I believe he was the lead animator, or definitely one of the animators anyway, on Battlefront 2. Now, he has since gone and made his own studio called Proxima. He founded that studio himself, and he is the design director on the game that they're working on. And he word for word tweeted, again, this is not making it up, I'll show it on screen. He said, "Loving the renewed hype around Battlefront 2. I was lead animator on the game." There you go. That confirms he was the lead animator. "If Battlefront 3 ever happens, I'd love to return. The team was excellent and the community feedback loop was the best I've seen in my career. So many ideas left on the table." So again, this isn't just me making up like, oh, he tweeted about it, so he must want to return. The man literally said he would return, or I guess he said he would love to return. And in reply to that tweet as well, as more backup, this was about a day or so later, he said, "The replies and love this tweet is getting really reminded me how incredible the community was and still is. You guys are the absolute best. I genuinely hope we can find a way to make Battlefront 3 happen someday." So he didn't say, "I hope they can find a way," or "I hope someone can find a way." He said, "I hope we can find a way to make Battlefront 3 happen." So that is just another example there. And the thing is that this guy, like I said, has founded his own studio. He now pretty much owns his own company and still said he'd be willing to return, which is just absolutely insane. We also saw Mats Helge, who I made a video on this whole discussion the other day, so be sure to go and check that out. But he's another former Battlefront developer that literally said he would love to return. And he even said that he has spoken to ex-colleagues and they want to get the band back together. Again, saying they want to doesn't mean that they are going to or that they realistically can. It just means that they would love to, but that's kind of the point that I'm getting at here, that whether it is realistic or possible or not, there is clear desire there. A lot of these people do want to come back, whether they can or can't do that. So the desire is very clearly there. And I think that for me personally, this is the perfect way I would love to see this game come back, getting a core group of those former Battlefront devs. So for example, Dennis, Ben, Kevin Johnson, who is still a community manager on Battlefield. He hasn't really said anything about him wanting to return, but he loved that game. He just retweeted a thing about it the other day, so he's clearly showing a bit of love for it. But getting Kevin back would be great. CJ as well, if you guys remember, he was I think the weapons designer, and he also did a lot of stuff with the skins for the clones and stuff like that. He has since moved to Ubisoft and worked on Star Wars Outlaws. He put a picture up the other day on Twitter of him playing Battlefront with all the renewed hype and stuff. So I kind of get the feeling he would want to return. Again, just kind of making that up off the top of my head. I don't know that for sure, but all of these guys tweeting about it, all of them, how much they talked about it back in the day of how much they loved it. It would be shocking if they didn't want to return. We then have, like I said, Harvey Newman and Mats Helge, who have literally said they want to return. You could get people like Guillaume, for example, who was I think the lead hero designer. And you could just have this core group of the former team as the leads for each of the different departments within the game, I guess you would say. So that would be sort of my dream pathway for this to happen. Now, obviously, they would need the backing of some sort of investor. I don't imagine, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't imagine they could just go out and afford to make a Battlefront on their own. I don't think they would have that kind of money. These games cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make, so I don't believe these guys are that rich that they could be doing it themselves. But there is no doubt in my mind that there would be surely some company out there, or even just a group of investors, who you could show the success of Battlefront 2 and you could show the current renewed hype for the game, and they would potentially, if they're willing to risk a bit of their capital, they would be willing to invest in the game. So again, probably very unlikely, but for me, that would be just the greatest way for this to happen, to get all of these guys back, form their own studio, similar to what I said about Sandfall Interactive. They were in a good spot working at Ubisoft and they thought, no, we want to make our own thing. They went and did that, and they've now just pretty much made Game of the Year. They've sold 3.5 million copies of that game in a month, essentially. And so that company is now set. They're going to get such a good backing from this game that they can now move on. They can probably expand a little bit, bring in more devs and work on whether it's a sequel to Expedition 33 or something else in the future. Like that sort of play that they made, while very risky, it's paid off. And now I'd imagine Sandfall Interactive over the next 10 to 15 years will become like a very popular development studio. So anyway, it is all just food for thought in terms of getting that band back together. It seems pretty clear that EA probably isn't going to do this. They kind of have their hands tied with a lot of their current IPs like Battlefield and stuff like that. But in saying that, like I said, a lot of these developers who used to work at DICE, who have moved on to other places, they have expressed interest. And a great way that I would love to see this happen is them just banding back together and making their own studio. That in itself isn't that unrealistic. Like I said, Harvey Newman has founded his own studio. Dennis Brandvall has also done the same thing. So two of these guys now do have their own companies. Harvey literally said he would come back despite that. Now, Dennis hasn't said as much, but there's no reason that Dennis's current studio, once they finish the game they're working on, can't come in as a support studio the same way that like DICE worked on Battlefront 2, but they had Motive and Criterion as well. So there are a million ways to do this, and you could have more than just one studio. You could have a bunch of them band together to make their own studio, but then Dennis's team could come in and help support them or something like that. Like, there are plenty of different ways to do that. So anyway, that is just a bit of food for thought. It's something that I was thinking about Sandfall Interactive the other day, and this actually was sparked from my man Elliot, who you guys would know, Battlefront Updates. He tweeted saying like, well, it looks like EA's not going to do it. Who would you guys want to see make a Battlefront? And that's sort of what sparked the idea for me. And then I thought, hey, I'll turn that into a video. So like I said, probably very unrealistic, but it is fun to talk about nonetheless. And I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts on this down in the comment section as well. But that is going to do it for another Battlefront video, boys and girls. There is plenty more on the way. I've actually got another video kind of similar to this, talking about some other studios I would love to see just take the mantle of Battlefront and work on it that are already established studios. And then next week, I've got a couple of guides actually on the way, as well as the return of the Killstreak Breakdown series and the Top 5 Plays series. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that. I'm not going to let this Battlefront hype die down. I want to keep it going as long as we can, because that is realistically going to increase the chances we ever get a Battlefront 3. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that content. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.